Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves in a very interesting time to be alive. Self-landing rockets, facial recognition, Wi-Fi, Jeff Bezos' fancy new yacht. Technology surrounds us, but people often mistake the word technology to refer solely to electronics or super high-tech wireless devices. That's wrong. Technology refers to the skills, methods, and processes used to achieve goals. That's it. It's when people create things that can be used to make life easier. People use technology to produce goods or services, carry out goals such as scientific investigation or sending a spaceship to the moon. It's used to solve problems like disease or famine. But most of the technology that has shaped the world that we live in today has been overlooked, forgotten, or wholly taken for granted. Here's what I mean. Look at the word technology. Do you see it? Good. From here, we're going to have to step way back in order to gain a wider perspective, so we don't overlook the fact that language is itself a method and a process used to communicate ideas. Okay, let's zoom back in. Here's a question, and you may think it to be a stupid question, but we're going to assume that there's no such thing as a stupid question. Ready? Let's go. What is this? You're probably thinking it's an A, right? But is it? Is it really? To be completely truthful, it's just a couple of slanted lines with another horizontal line through the middle. It could be a teepee, a house, an icy peak, but most of us learned from a very young age that it's an A, and an A is a type of a letter. A letter is the smallest unit of written language. They're the building blocks of words, which are the building blocks of sentences, paragraphs, chapters, etc. But when you saw this image, you most likely didn't see the side view of a ladder, or a house, teepee, or an icy peak. You saw an A, and depending on where you grew up and what language you speak, you may pronounce it differently. It's from the Latin or Roman alphabet, and the English language uses 26 of these Latin letters. Here's a Latin B, here's a Latin Z, and this is a Latin X. It's also the Roman number for 10. Roman numerals are fun, but they're less efficient than, say, Arabic numerals. Which look like this, by the way. More on those later. We recognize these symbols as letters because languages and alphabets have been passed down and collectively agreed upon in order to be useful to humans. So what do we mean by useful? Well, letters are used to build words. And what's a word? A word is a single, distinct, meaningful element of speech or writing. Emphasis on meaningful. If you strip a word of its meaning, it's just a noise or some sort of markings. It should be noted here that agreed upon is extremely simplistic. There are no grand councils of ultra-wise sages who sat down and crafted languages overnight. Languages are living. Words can change over time, and their meanings are always subject to interpretation depending on things like context, intent, time periods, regions, etc. If I present this image, you're probably going to identify it as a tree, right? But again, it's not. Not really. Not only is it simply an image of a tree presented to you in a series of ones and zeros, but remember, tree is a mouth noise, and these are the markings. It's kind of weird to separate the word with the thing, but words are like labels. The words of a language are basically symbols that represent things, and we use these symbols to communicate and share ideas both in speech and in writing. The methods of how human beings have communicated have evolved so much that our ancestors would call our modern world magical and miraculous, if not outright impossible. Clear communication was necessary for early humans to survive. The process of adapting written forms of the spoken word allowed for the storing of information. This meant that knowledge could be preserved and recorded, passed down and inherited. Origin stories, myths, cultures, histories, religions, all of these things stemmed from the spreading of ideas. And all of these things are also adaptive processes that are completely overlooked today, but may have been necessary for the species to survive. A lot of these stories and myths contributed to belief systems, and it turns out that what you believe is really important, because it allowed for earlier humans to grapple with their utter lack of understanding of the world around them. Death, famine, disease, floods, volcanic disasters, conquests, solar eclipses, all of these things and more occurred, and they had no real understanding of much of these phenomena. so they attributed them to entities outside of themselves. Origin stories, afterlife tales, and mythologies of all types, most of them lost and forgotten, allowed our ancestors to survive an unimaginably cruel and harsh world, with no shoulders to stand on, and very little technology to enjoy. In order to spread and preserve ideas, early humans used paints, chisels, stone tablets, and other forms of primitive technology. Yes, it is technology, to ensure that knowledge could be preserved and passed on to future generations. So wait, are you really saying that stone tablets are technology? Really? Yes. Really? Imagine you're one of the first people to figure out that you can communicate through time and space without seeing, hearing, or even knowing the recipient of your message. They were onto something. Something big. But it wasn't good enough.
I won't.
You won't? You won't? Why, it's not good enough for you?
It's not even close!
Stone tablets are heavy. Chiseling was tedious and difficult. They didn't have safety goggles or safety first mantras. If they fell, they broke. And that's just annoying. So humans, dissatisfied, sought out to find more effective ways to store their written language. Eventually, they refined plant fibers and created parchments and papyruses that could be written on with inks and dyes. This was great because they were lightweight and stackable, and if you dropped them, they didn't break. They weren't perfect, they were flammable and you could lose them in the wind, but these were trade-offs that people were willing to accept. They created elaborate scrolls, and people who were able to worked as scribes to create copies, because the fear of losing the original was serious. It still wasn't good enough, though. A lot of scrolls were long and tended to get tattered and torn over time, so humans, still not satisfied, decided to cut the paper into more manageable pieces, and then bind them together into a new form of technology, the book.
Wait, is that where the word binder comes from? Whoa.
Yeah, the book binding was actually a literal profession. I mean, I guess it still is, but it's super niche, like a blacksmith today or something. So cool, no more torn scrolls, but the scribes would still be scribbling for a few more centuries before the invention of the printing press arrived to relieve them of their tedious work. Although, maybe some of the scribes opposed the printing press because they didn't want to lose their jobs or livelihoods. Probably not, but maybe. So great, now with innovative technology, human beings were able to mass-produce printed copies of written works. This was fantastic for books and pamphlets. Ideas of all kinds were able to reach more people than ever before. But there's just one thing. While the spoken word needs a listener, the written word requires a reader. Literacy is a skill. It's not an innate ability gifted to us. It takes access, practice, and determination. In fact, the adaptation of developing literacy was, and arguably still is, the most important skill a human being can have. Ladies and gentlemen, cartography is the science of what? Shipbuilding, map-making, cartwheeling, or world languages? If you answered map-making, congratulations, you are correct. So the printing press was also massively important for cartography. See, maps are inventions too. And having to draw one out and hope that the dimensions and projections and proportions were all accurate, as well as consistent with other maps, has been a challenge that has plagued map makers for ages. The ability to mass print the same map helped launch what we now know as the Age of Exploration. Or when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue and found a sea route to India, which turned out not to be India. Remember when I said it's important what you believe? Explorers in the 15th century believed that the world was much smaller than it actually is. They didn't know about the Americas, so they never had a name for it. So when they landed there, they called the people they encountered there Indian. But it's not India. It never was. And among the people who pointed that out was Amerigo Vespucci. And he got 2 continents named after him for that. What a legacy for a man who was almost entirely forgotten. So that's how the Americas got their name, but what about the people? The term Indian is obviously incorrect, even though that name has stuck for centuries and is even a federally recognized term, but Native American is entirely false too. Because why name them after this guy? A 15th century Italian explorer and cartographer. Like they're native to him? In reality, there were hundreds of tribes in the land that would be called America, and they already had and still have names for themselves. Remember, a word is a symbol that represents something either out in the world or felt within. That concept is not owned by any one language. And although not using writing in the same way that European cultures did, The members of these tribes had their own words, languages, and symbols. I gotta say, I find it funny how you can talk about what they believe in regards to the geographic size of the Earth, but you leave out that they also believed that with just 50 armed men, they could subjugate them all and make them do whatever they wanted. I know. You know those are Columbus's own words, written in his law. No, I know. I read that. This whole topic could expand into an entire video on its own, but I don't want this one to get dark. Okay. Not yet. Okay. Of course. Because of the words that could be written on paper and the ability of a reader to comprehend the meaning of those words, it was possible for human beings to plan, create, innovate, and to build upon the works of all of those who have lived and died before them. From the advent of agriculture, to the creation of the wheel, to the wooden ships of the age of exploration, to the first steam engine, to railroad systems, postal services, telegraphs, electric light, running water that won't kill you, plumbing, radio, telephones, TV, dentistry, firefighters, airplanes, water heaters, legal systems, microphones, modern medicine, computers, spandex, the internet, smartphones, space stations, tablets, smart tablets, not those old stone ones, and the ability for you to watch this video and to hear my voice that is coming to you on an electronic device that if you tried to explain to someone living in ancient Rome, they wouldn't believe you. They wouldn't take you seriously.
Challenge accepted. Take me to Rome.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it contains the sum of all human knowledge, to a certain extent, when it's on.
What do you mean on?
So yeah, it has this screen, right, and it lights up.
Lights up? Like the sun?
No, not like that. You need to charge it, like with the battery.
Battery? That's a crime here.
No, like it. So you move your finger on the screen, and it's called scrolling, right?
Wait, a scroll? I've heard that before. Oh, those things those people can read.
Wait, you can't read?
Nah, I gotta go. The show's about to start.
A show? Oh yeah, you guys have a coliseum. I always forget that you guys are pretty civilized.
I heard they're gonna release some lions on some slave girls from other regions tonight.
What the fuck?
Yeah, they do some crazy stuff for ratings.
They don't put that part in the songs.
I gotta go grab my seat. See ya.
Okay, let's get out of here. So,
I told you, man. We are standing upon the shoulders of giants. The advantages we have today might literally be seen as baffling, maybe magical to anyone from centuries ago, if not millennia. If I get cold, I can grab a fitted hoodie that I never had to knit, partially made out of synthetic fibers that I never had to create. Maybe it's really cold and I want to light a fire. I can have in my pocket instant access to a flame by way of a lighter that I never had to invent. And if I'm hot, I can turn on the AC that I never had to design. That's my favorite one. I don't even need to know how it works.
Travels through these pipes into the second key component, the condenser. The condenser is
I don't even care. Hey, are you hungry? What do you feel like eating? Any chance you have to sharpen a spear or spend all day gathering plants for sustenance? Avoided any warring tribes lately?
What?
Any chance you'd have to harvest and mill wheat or fetch water from the well to make bread? Actually, no. Where have you been? Bread is bad for you now. Early humans just might weep if they could walk into any grocery store in any developed country today and see just how much food is available to people who have nothing to do with its production. We just purchase it now, with money. Ah, currency. Another invention. An abundance of cheaply available processed foods might seem like a great thing in contrast to starvation, but too much of it over a long enough period of time can destroy the human body. Slowly at first, then all at once. The world's biggest killer today is heart disease. There's a multi-billion-dollar gym industry to supplement for the fact that we live sedentary lives compared to people who farm for their own food. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think royalty from centuries ago would be envious of people who consider themselves poor today? That's a serious question. Here's an example of something you're probably familiar with, but would blow the minds of people from just centuries ago. Are you ready? Wait for it. Ice cream. Literally ice cream. Do you have any idea how insane of a delicacy this was a few hundred years ago? Only the richest of the rich could afford such a luxury. And yet, today, nobody bats an eye. You're eating ice cream for breakfast? Like it's not even remotely a big deal. Unless The machine is out of service at McDonald's. Again. So while insanely blessed with all of these rich and vast advantages and technologies, the blessing of abundance comes at a cost. While many inventions are wonderful and glorious, there are some equally, if not exceedingly terrifying ones. Throughout human history, there has been conflict between individuals and between groups of individuals. Tens of thousands of years ago, people would use large, heavy objects as weapons, basically throwing rocks at each other. But eventually, it dawned on some that they could sharpen that rock and attach it to a stick, then use it as a spear. Fast forward. Now they're extracting, refining, and smelting metallic ores from the earth and shaping them into blades, shackles, arrow tips, and chains. That's resourceful. Well, hang on, and also to create tools to chop things and to hunt and to farm. It's not all bad, but you're not wrong. Let's keep going. Fast forward. Hey, remember those Arabic numerals I mentioned and how efficient they are? I think so, yeah. Yeah, now they're using physics to calculate the trajectories of projectiles to destroy armies, sink ships, and shatter castle walls. Disgusting. That's kind of impressive, actually. Let's keep going. Let's go way far. Yay, let's go. Whoa. What is that? That thing. You're not gonna like this one. What have they done? Go back. Rewind. I told you. All right, let's go. Where are we? Do you see them? Yeah. This is Athens. The Greeks, with their god of flight Hermes, and timeless myths like the flight of Icarus. Reese, what are we doing with this history lesson? Get to the point. Okay, my point is that humans have been gripped by the idea of flight for millennia. In fact, experts maintain that 97.4% of human beings who have ever existed have envied the birds for their ability to fly. But today, we don't have to. Because birds, while they can fly gracefully, are in the end stuck with bird brains. And I mean no offense whatsoever to my friends in the avian community. Are you ready to fast forward again? Honestly fine, but just be careful this time. Yeah. Kitty Hawk. That's a cool name. This is an important place. The first sustained airplane flight was made by two brothers in December 1903. And just 35 years later, not only had airplanes been modified to drop bombs onto cities during wars, but the Nazi superpower had its top scientists invent the V-2 to obliterate London. A massive missile that was capable of being fired several hundred miles away from its target. Basically giving birth to the concept of the modern rocket. Crazy. How many homes could you heat with that energy? I don't know. It's not my energy. There's no shortage of truly evil inventions, torture devices, napalm, nukes, glitter, and today, some of the world's biggest brains are being used to perfect weapons of all kinds. Someone literally invented the guillotine. Like, they drew it out and everything. I always thought it was called the guillotine. It doesn't matter.
Potato, tomato.
And you might think that it's a disgusting and grotesque invention, but it was actually believed to be more humane than other executions of the time. And messy.
Gross.
You see how brutal physical weapons are? Yeah. But ideas can be weaponized too. Ideas like the other or the outgroup can be used on others. But we can also attack ourselves based on perceived shortcomings. You can invent obstacles in your mind. You can invent arbitrary criteria for failure and feel like you're never, ever good enough.
Oh my god, I do that.
Me too.
Oh my god. You're so stupid. I don't want to. You can suffer in a prison of your own thoughts and invent even more ways to feel hopeless, anxious, or depressed. And the birds don't envy us for that.
I knew that bird brain comment was too far.
Mean rumors, self-doubt, excuses, fixed mindsets, conspiracy theories, propaganda, dishonest news stories that are peddled by massive for-profit media companies to sell advertising space at the expense of their audience's mental health.
How else would we know what to be outraged over?
Or what hashtag to use.
So,
but the narrative we thought we knew is not the reality.
Don't despair, though. Many of those ads are for alcohol and pharmaceuticals, so you can cure what ails you.
Side effects may include dry mouth, insomnia, sexual side effects, diarrhea, nausea, and sleepiness.
Talk to your doctor about Zola.
Thoughts? Fear and anger sell, I guess. Did you know that you can become addicted to negative thoughts and feelings? Really? I'm not kidding. You can manufacture illness in your mind. It's called the nocebo effect. That reminds me, did you know that people can manufacture contagious viruses in research labs? That's...
Maybe we were better off before we knew what germs were.
I don't know about that. Hey, I'm sorry, but I have to break this to you. We're here, in the present moment. We just spent so much time bouncing around, but the past only exists in memories, photographs, videos, books, and stories, and the legacy of everything that is left behind. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I don't understand you. I can't get past the bad and the ugly. I know. I've been there. Been where? Considering the vast expanse of all of the possibilities we can create as humans, it's important to consider if what we're creating is helpful or harmful to ourselves and to others. The physics behind the V2 eventually led to the space race, to humans leaving the orbit of the Earth for the first time, to the moon landing, to the Hubble Space Telescope, to the Vatican officially admitting after 350 years that Galileo did nothing wrong? Funny how that works. To the famous blue marble photo, to Pluto constantly questioning its identity, and now SpaceX is developing rockets that can land back on Earth after being in orbit, because of the innovations and developments that came before them, both good and bad. With the dizzying heights and the dazzling views upon the shoulders of all of those who have lived and died before us, it's easy to become nauseated, dizzy, anxious, and depressed. But there's also no shortage of ways to become awestruck and smitten by all of the incredible things left for us. It's totally normal to feel a mixture of those things. Just remember where you are. If you spend too much time thinking about the past or anticipating the future, whether it's with dread or excitement, then you'll only exist in your mind. And you can't act if you're in there forever.
You're not here. You're with your trouble. If you're with your trouble when fighting happens, more trouble for you.
Look around and choose your thoughts wisely, because those become your actions. All there really is this moment, right now, and it's always fleeting. No, wait, stop the music. This is horrible. It's not a good video. It's not a good ending. It's vague, watered down, simplistic, not even in chronological order. Is there anything positive you could say? Or no. It's literally terrible. Hold that thought. You know what you should do? Yeah?
Michael Cole! Shut